Welcome back to Money Talk Radio and the Ellis Martin Report. Today I have the pleasure of speaking with Patrice and Jonathan Lafontaine. Mr. Ra is the Director of Geological Information and Promotion at the Ministry of Natural Resources and Forest, MNRF, for the Canadian Province of Quebec. In this capacity, he is in charge of managing geological information generated by geological surveys and mineral exploration work, of the promotion of Quebec's mineral potential, and of public awareness with regard to the mining sector. Working in the mining sector for nearly 25 years, Mr. Ra has been employed by the MNRF since 2001. He notably held the position of Senior Editor of the Québec Plan for the Development of Critical and Strategic Metals 2020 through 2025, and of Director of the Bureau de la Connaissance Géoscientifique du Québec. In this capacity, he was responsible for planning and implementing geoscientific surveys throughout the province. Jonathan Lafontaine has been a strategic advisor for the Ministry of Natural Resources and Forest of Quebec since 2020. He's highly involved with the implementation of the Critical and Strategic Mineral Plan, especially to help promote the mineral potential of Quebec, and plays an important part in tracking exploration activity for the government in the province. Mr. Lafontaine is a professional geologist registered in Quebec, Saskatchewan, and New Brunswick. He has well over 20 years of technical and corporate experience and has worked on several projects of different commodities throughout Canada, working with diverse organizations from major mining companies to junior explorers. He has also held significant roles in corporate development, in mining investment, and in managing international technical committees. Patrice, Jonathan, thank you so much for joining me today on the program. It's great to have you with us.
Thank you kindly for having us.
Usually, a journalist such as myself learns about the attributes of mining in Quebec through the companies that we have on the program doing business there. This is a first for us, as we're actually talking to the provincial government and hearing firsthand why companies do business in Quebec, and it is most likely the most favorable province in Canada for doing so. With over 200 active mines in Quebec, how has the country of Canada and the mining sector in general benefited from the policies that you've put forth?
Thank you very much for the question. If I could just slightly reconfirm some of the numbers. In Quebec, we do have over 20 active mines. We do have historical past producing properties. That does exist. And we do have well over 30 mining projects that have reached the stage of preliminary economic assessment or further along the line. We have hundreds of exploration projects spread out all throughout the province. We can track well over about 1,000 that are publicly known. So there is a lot of interest in the province today. That is correct. What is interesting about Quebec is that it's a very unique ecosystem for mineral exploration and mining development. And the reason why it's rather unique is that the government of Quebec, either directly or through crown corporations or supported non-for-profit organizations, really are heavily involved in every link of the chain from exploration to mining to rehabilitation. The government of Quebec has really structured a series of policies, a series of organizations that can help as projects move forward. I think that's one of the key things that distinguishes Quebec from other jurisdictions. And by doing that, we've set ourselves up for an incredible amount of interaction with the companies as they go along. So we can help companies as they progress. We can accompany them. They don't have to, but we can be there, for instance, through partnerships with SOCEM or Investissement Québec or a series of other companies crown corporations that exist.
After listening to that, my second question is, how do you possibly manage all of that? It just seems daunting to me.
There are a lot of components that go into this. That's true. So, for instance, I mentioned two crown corporations, Investissement Québec and SOCEM. SOCEM technically is a part of Investissement Québec. They do have a board of administration, they do have their own mandates, but they operate relatively distinct entities. So SOCEM's mandate is to further exploration in the province. It's an exploration company. The advantage of having SOCEM is that it's a company that explores with its own budgets and its own guaranteed budgets. So it isn't really subject to the same market that a publicly listed company would be. This gives SOCEM a distinct advantage in terms of being able to explore for geological fundamentals. And it gives them the opportunity to create long-lasting partnerships with companies that go forward on projects that have technical merit. And another organization that I mentioned, Investissement Québec, is the investment arm of the Ministry of Economy, Innovation, and Energy. And they can participate financially with all kinds of different tools within projects that move forward. So they can go into equity financing, they could participate through streaming deals, or whatever tools are most advantageous for the project as it moves along.
Quebec has a 400-year history, at least with regard to European settlement, to my knowledge. Do you think that has something to do with the advanced technology and ability that you have over the rest of Canada in really putting together all those components that you just mentioned?
I think there's a lot of variables in this, and a lot of them are difficult to encompass. But I would say that there is a historical legacy in Quebec, in French Canada, of scientific learning, scientific advancement. That historical advantage has been passed down. So, for instance, in the 17 and 1800s, a lot of scientific research was done by missionaries and through the Catholic Church at that point in time. Père Marie-Victorin was a great botanist, for instance, and there were other research organizations that were promoted within the province. Quebec did have a strong tie with France before a long time ago, and France, of course, has a long and strong scientific field. There are historical ties to science, to moving forward on the scientific front in terms of research. And through time, we've also learned about how to best put together packages to help in the modern day, how to help companies move forward through their projects. So there are historical ties, there are historical reasons. There are reasons where Quebec has been affiliated with other jurisdictions that have manufacturing capacity, and Quebec can be a partner with those jurisdictions as well. So there is a long-standing tradition in Quebec of that type of mentality.
Patrice, can I ask you, what is the most fascinating part of your job when you travel around the world promoting mining in the province of Quebec?
I would say first that in Quebec, we have a diversified mineral resource endowment. So that's really, I think, solid ground on which to build our mining sector. So that's a big advantage on which to build. Also, we were the first to launch a critical mineral plan in Canada and maybe even in North America. We were one of the first to be seen on international events about critical minerals. So I think that's something we saw the response from the companies, from investors, and that's something that's really a big motivation for us to promote Quebec. Now we see the impact of those international promotional activities in Quebec with a strong increase in investment for mineral exploration for critical minerals. So that's something that's really motivating for us. Also, I'm responsible for the geological database, which is renowned worldwide, an example, and that's also an advantage that we offer to companies willing to invest into Quebec. That database the information dates back to the 19th century. The first information we have in that database, we have 80,000 documents, a lot of maps and a lot of data available, and all in one system. And one of the great advantages of that system is that everything is linked inside this database. So that's also a great advantage we have. And I think that's something that distinguishes also Quebec from other jurisdictions and other provinces in Canada.
That's incredible. As I've said, I've covered this sector probably for 25 years. I did not know this information that you just imparted until just now. So I applaud you for partnering with us to get the message out across North America, across Canada, across the United States, and around the world about exactly how extensive the mining industry is in Quebec and how old it is. And because of that age, like we referred to earlier, you have all this data. And it's certainly an asset. I know that there are companies from all over the world that are involving themselves in Quebec. We have a sponsor company that is building a lithium processing plant in James Bay from Australia. And I think that's incredible, the amount of interest that you have all over the world. Also, the grade of gold that you have in the Abitibi is astounding. It's one of the best places in the world for that gold. And I think we're going to see a great resurgence in the coming gold market. Not to mention all the critical minerals that you mentioned, copper and graphite and nickel and what have you. It's just astounding.
Thanks. The geological endowment of Quebec is fascinating. It's absolutely fascinating. When you think about Quebec having several geological provinces, from the Appalachians through the Grenville province, through the James Bay Territory, Northern Quebec, the Labrador Trough, the Cape Smith Belt, the various geological environments within the province are just fantastic, and they can lead to long-lasting mineral camps. So if we think about, say, just you mentioned the Abitibi greenstone belts, the gold-hosting greenstone belts, they do run from Ontario into Quebec. And a lot of the world's gold comes from that geological province. And discoveries are still being made today. One of the things that we've noticed that's really important is that as people explore, as people research, and as more information comes out, it helps understand what your next target is going to be, which is why we put in so much effort into our geological database. The more information we put out, the more information that explorers have on hand, the better their exploration decisions are and the more success they have. That's one of the key reasons why we put out so much of this information. Some of the iron deposits in Côte-Nord on the north shore of the St. Lawrence, these are long-lasting deposits, long-lasting mining camps. Of course, we have enduring infrastructure that help access these camps. We know it's going to be there for a while. We know it's going to give local economic opportunities. Quebec has understood this, and we've deployed another crown corporation called Société Plan Nord. So for Northern Quebec, Société Plan Nord is an organization that helps develop and identify infrastructure opportunities. They have a budgetary envelope that helps optimize whether it's forestry roads, rail lines, deep sea ports in Northern Quebec, and they also help with community engagement. We've understood that these long-living projects, these long-living mining camps that exist for different commodities in different parts of the province, we also have an organization that helps structure access, structure the infrastructure, structure the community outreach. So Quebec is heavily involved in the mining industry. I think there's no question about it for various reasons, for various targets. And I think the best way of accessing this information is go online and have a look at it. We're certainly there to help as well.
Where should we go online?
Our geological database is on CGEOM. If you web search CGEOM, SIGEOM Quebec, it's going to be probably the first link that comes up. That's where you start your search. So for people who are interested in the fundamentals and in understanding if they have a geological target in mind, it's a great way to start. It's a great way to see what exists in the province. And from there, you can also access on our Gestim portal. You can essentially access the claims online as well. So you can essentially have your dedicated exploration territory within minutes if it's the right part of town. We're really making this as accessible as possible.
I have a lot more questions to ask you, including your relationship with the First Nations in Quebec all over the province, but I'm going to have to save that for next week. You are going to come back and join me next week, aren't you?
I'll do everything I can.
Thank you. Patrice, Jonathan, this has been insightful, educational for me. As long as I've been in the sector, I did not know half the things that you've imparted with me today. So thank you very much for joining us today in the program. I've been speaking with Patrice Ra and Jonathan Lafontaine, representing the Ministry of Natural Resources and Forest of the province of Quebec, Canada. Learn more about MNRF by going to quebec.ca. To subscribe to Money Talk Radio, go to ellismartin.com.